Hi everyone, my name is David Lam, and welcome to November's AnimChallenge. I have the honor of reviewing November's challenge, which is Thor, and I'm happy to announce that the winner is Matias Cifuentes. And I apologize in advance, Matias, if I'm mispronouncing your name. So let's dive in. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'll play it one more time. So Matias, I love what you've done. It's very, very creative. It's very fun. It's entertaining, and there's so many good stuff behind here. And I can totally kind of see like where you're coming from. Like you're taking superheroes and putting them in their kind of like everyday life, like everyday mundane life. In this case, Thor is working behind a desk, right, at a desk job. So it's very similar or akin to the end of Marvel's Avengers, where they're eating falafel at the end. Iron Man or Robert Downey Jr. is joking, and they're having a meal, right? Post-victory meal, post-battle meal. So this is fun. I very creative. The fact that you're putting them in this kind of like everyday situation makes these characters grounded and believable. And also you're imposing the question like, what could go wrong, right, with superheroes at everyday life? So this is very funny. It's different, right? Or we see these characters in a different way. So I think a lot of people can resonate, like, and empathize, like, oh, the pain behind sitting on a desk. So this is great. I really commend you on what you've done here. So I have a few things I think I can help suggest to I think story-wise or clarity, like the beats and the framing, and then I'll go over those things first, and then I can dive into the animation. So I think like clarity and story timing is more important because you're trying to tell um, you're trying to tell a story here, even though it's only 8 seconds short, but there's a lot of context and meaning in here. So I think for me, it took a few times to understand what's exactly going on. And after maybe the third or fourth time I got it, it's, he's definitely not happy here at his job, and he's putting his hand out, and that's only inviting his hammer. And so the clerk or the librarian reacts uh, and knowingly, okay, something bad is about to happen. And rightfully so, the hammer comes in. So I think it took me a couple times. So I think that's the first thing we can really try to address. Like, how can we um, simplify that or clear that up? Like, so it's a little easier for the audience to take in, especially on the first time. The goal is to make sure like it's readable on the first time. So I think staging and timing is probably the most important, two most important things. The hand is very important, right? It's that gesture, like his hand coming out and the hammer is going to come somewhere. I know that audio will help, but this is purely picture animation. So one thing you can really do to help present the hand or like give some clarity to that, this is pure, I know this is animation contest, but a lot of camera and staging really it plays a big role. And one thing you might want to consider is everything's a little bit compressed, like the lens of your camera. You can see like in terms of like distance between his hand and the back wall, it feels really compressed. And even here, right, like between his hand and this foreground object, in case this guy right here, the librarian. So I think you can go with a slightly wider lens. And what happens is you can get a little bit more deeper space, right? There's going to be a little bit a sense of space between like all of your foreground, middle ground, and your background. So that might help give you a little sense of deeper space. And what that's going to do is it's gonna make your background a little smaller, right? Like you're not gonna have a back wall that's so dominating your shot. And this picture frame might be a little smaller too. And I'll kind of dive deep. I'll go into that a little bit later. Why that picture frame is a little distracting later. But also this guy, there'll be a little bit more space between him and him. So you'll get a little bit more space, and they'll give you a little bit more like real estate or screen space to have some negative space between this guy and the librarian and his hand. So the overall, like you'll just get, it'll be easier to take in everything. So let me just keep scrubbing forward. So deeper space kind of will help set things up. And one thing you can do next is, if you think about your timing, it is quite compressed. So if I go back a few frames, as the moment the hand drops right here, lightning is already flashing, and this librarian is reacting. So there's almost 3 beats, like the hand gesturing falling in place. That's the first beat. There's 3 moments that are happening: the hand dropping, the lightning, and then the librarian. So you want to space that out just a bit. I know you have a really tight, like timeline. You can only fit 8 seconds. I think you can afford another second here. And you're only using 7 seconds. So you have 1 more second to try to draw this moment out. So even kind of delaying the lightning and then delaying this librarian reacting could help. So that'll give you a little bit more time in between each of those moments. The hand dropping. So I'll just draw one. Like the hand dropping is the first moment. And then if you can space out the lightning, that comes second. And then third, his reaction. So just giving a few frames in between, it's definitely going to help clarity-wise, just so we can see the hand dropping. The third thing, the next thing I would naturally do is, like once you have a wider lens, you'll create a little bit more space. You'll have a little bit more depth to play with, and you're kind of doing it already. Like he's in the foreground, right? The librarian's in the foreground, and then the monitor's in the middle ground. Thor's in the so I'll just write it like foreground, middle ground. He's in the middle background, and then this picture's in the far background. I'll just write FB for now. So continue playing with that deep space, and I think the hammer is the next logical thing that I was going to talk about. Like once the hammer comes in, it feels very 2D, like it's just coming from screen space left to right. And what happens is once that hammer comes into frame, we only get like 1 or 2 frames to really know like what's happening until the end. We finally see the hammer. And even so, like you kind of lose the hammer a lot during the action. And so my suggestion is, you already have deep space. We talked about like this frame right here, or this frame, like you have this kind of like foreground, middle ground, background. So why not continue that with the hammer? The hammer, instead of coming like from left to right, the hammer could be coming more like, so instead of going that way, right, it could be coming more diagonal, like past us, right, as in the foreground. And what's going to happen naturally is maybe the hammer, instead of the hammer being back here, right, off screen, maybe the hammer is more, instead of being here, maybe the hammer could be, since it's coming more foreground, maybe the hammer can be residing back here. So we still get a glimpse of it, the bulk of that hammer. And plus you'll kind of go from kind of going past us and playing, adding to that depth or that sense of space. So that leads to my next feedback is the guy's reaction. Like one thing that you can help evoke, like, oh, something's happening, like to help create a little bit more anticipation what's about to happen. When he reacts, he's already looking screen left as if he knows where it's coming from. So we should, like, if the hammer truly, like the hammer, we don't know where the hammer's at, and he should play along too. So if you had a little bit more time right here, like perhaps when he does go into this fetal position, like protecting or fearful, maybe you can get a quick glance. Maybe he starts looking screen right first, And then he darts over screen left because he hears it, he sees it coming, right? So that'll give you kind of like he's a bystander. He has no idea where it's coming from. He just senses something's happening. Just like us, right? Like we don't know what's happening, but something's coming. So just that quick dart will give us that sense of anticipation. So this is great. And when you do go with the wider lens, right, he might be a little bit bigger in frame, but he'll be a little bit further out because you'll create a little bit more negative space between the two. And ultimately, you can get that hand. You can have that hand. There's more clarity, right? It'll be just by itself behind the glass window. Just as a side note, I love the detail. So much going on. It took maybe the second or third time I noticed it, but even the force of the hammer coming in bends your your window. So that's brilliant. That's really cool to see that. I love that. And you have like really strong action lines. Like you can see like the bend of the windows kind of showing you that force, right, coming from the hammer. So brilliant. And then the next logical thing that I was going to say is, um, we see the hammer after the fact, right? Like we see it when all of this stuff happens. And so after the hammer, after like he grabs the hammer and all of this stuff, like the secondary, the payoff, right? All of this stuff kind of knocks down. There's a lot to take in. So it's almost like all this stuff coming, like falling off the desk is one moment. And then the second moment is registering like, oh, there's a hammer, because we didn't see it until now. We don't fully see it. And then the third thing that happens is this drop. Like this thing drops. So all three things are happening kind of in the same beat. So that's why I said like having the hammer a little bit more inclusive throughout that trajectory, like seeing it is going to give us a little bit more time to ingest like what the hell's happening. So this is dropping. And then this thing, I think the picture frame, if you delayed it just by a few frames, will help. And with the wider lens, it might be just a little bit smaller. And that way it doesn't rob us or steal our attention too much. The most important thing in my mind is the hammer, right? Making sure that everyone knows like the hammer came in and he's holding it, and that's what caused all the issues. So I would downplay this picture frame. Yeah, if it's still competing for our attention, then maybe get rid of it, right? Because you're already reinforcing Thor. Like, Thor's on screen, his hammer, even the books in the foreground here. So I don't know if you need this. It's a nice payoff, but just kind of keep in mind our attention or the gag is the hammer. Very cool. And of course, like Spider-Man coming through is fun, right? Like just him like coming in and invoking, like, come on, man, bro, like, what are you doing to distracting? So that's brilliant. That's really cute. It's fun. Okay. And I'm kind of going from level of importance, like, I started with the more important things, so I'm kind of going down lesser important. I would say the next thing that to think about is, one thing I was a little misled is the way he handles the book. He treats it with so much care and emphasis that I was buying into the book, like what's important about the book, or I was waiting for. I thought the gag was around the book, like something revealing. So that was a little misleading. I don't know if you're intentionally doing that, but if you're not, I wouldn't treat the book so precious, like which is holding two fingers. Like he's trying to keep it really mint and pristine, right? Like not trying to damage or hurt the cover. So if that was if it's not intended, then maybe he can hold it a little bit more natural, like just any other book. I know it has Thor in his name, but just that little nuance threw me off just a bit. So like the way he holds it, right, and then way he lays it out. Obviously, it makes Thor react, but that's not the most important thing. The hand, it's his hand coming out is the most important thing, right? So I would try to downplay the way you're handling the book. Sorry, the frame rate's a little choppy. Okay, so that kind of sums up the story and the staging part. And I can, I think those are the more important elements to just make sure it's readable, it's clear, especially if the audience only has one chance to watch this moment. So, but again, it's very creative, it's very fun. So I mad respect and I commend what you're able to accomplish, especially in a 7-second scene. So let me clear the screen and we can dive into animation. So this is brilliant. So little things, I'm just gonna dive right into animation. I would say everything is feels very believable. There's a lot of, even in the staging, there's a lot of asymmetry. It feels real natural. One thing that kind of caught me off guard, how symmetrical he is here. Like he feels a bit twitting, like he's just perfectly even, right? So maybe you can have him, in this case, like once he does settle into this kind of like hopelessness pose or despair, maybe he can put a little bit more weight on this shoulder, on his screen left. And that way, when he does raise his screen left arm, you have a little bit more to play with. So he's bearing his weight on screen left, and then he can shift screen right. So that little nuance can just give you, more range to play with and more emphasis on the hand. And then something that will help you is maybe this hand. I would say if you had a little bit more time, like we were talking about, maybe you can open, once the hand drops, right, maybe you can open the fingers just a little bit. So it's just giving you a little bit of that extra emphasis on his hand. And, that's his gesture for the hammer to arrive. So just a little bit of like finger opening up could help, right? Just splaying just a little bit. So minor detail. And one thing you can do is, I think you can downplay maybe the CRT monitor, like make it a little bit smaller. It'll actually make it will make the story even more comical, right? Like over empowering the male character or your protagonist, very much like Mr. Incredible when he's hunched over. So that'll add to the fun element. And also that'll give you a little bit more space or more negative space for his hand to appear, just a tiny bit. So that would really help. One thing you could explore, like with Thor, he goes from kind of despair, tired, to then this moment here. So I would say, is he surprised or confused? He feels surprised, like he shouldn't be surprised, right? Like the lightning, maybe he's just more confused, I suppose. That's more of a choice, right? Like you can try to play it the other way. Like if right now he's surprised, but if he's confused, it'll be kind of more squinty, furrow, like, oh shit, what's happening? Rather than, because once he hears the lightning, he should be more confused, in my opinion. That's more of a, you know, directorial take, like, but it might be worth considering if you want to try that, just that look and feel. But I see what you're going for. Like, there's definitely that kind of like stretch component, and then squash in the face once the thing comes. So the other thing to think about too, he is Like one thing you can try is, I wouldn't anticipate, like he knows that this one frame here. If the hammer's coming, it's a natural thing. So you can try, one thing you can try is maybe he doesn't anticipate here, like this little straw, this one frame, like he's not compressing just yet. Because what it shows me is like he's not, like he is Thor, he should be able to take in the hammer, right? Like he should be able to, it's going a lot faster, but he should be able to know, okay, hammer's coming, but he's just not ready for it. So right now it looks like he's flinching, like he's scared of the hammer. So and again, that's kind of like a directorial note. I think that's more of your take, but you can try maybe getting rid of this kind of one frame flinching, because it doesn't feel like Thor-like. And then obviously this is like appropriate because he's reacting like how much damage that just happened to that just took place. And then once you do, try to clear this frame. Yeah, and revisiting the earlier note with the hammer coming in from the foreground, then you'll get, I think what we can do is naturally like this hammer, be coming in more kind of with perspective, with depth, coming past the camera a little bit more, and then you'll get it on screen a few frames longer, and we can see. And with the wider lens too, like this hammer might be a little bit smaller, like you'll have it more in frame, right? Because you'll be a wider lens, the background will be a little bit smaller. So it'll one thing you want to make sure, like the hammer is more important. Like having the screen time for the hammer, it's more prominent on screen is quite important. Right now it's cut off, right? Like you kind of have it cut off, and it's not as clear or like dominant on screen. So you just want a little bit more of the hammer on screen. And one thing I would say, the Spider-Man gag is funny, and it's creative. I'm wondering one thing you can do is there something you could add to Spider-Man, like whether it's on his outfit or the back of the chair, like that he was affected by the Thor incident. Maybe the chair is like partially broken, or like I'm just kind of spitballing, like a piece of the chair is broken, or we could see like a loose arm, the arm of the chair loose, right, or dangling, or something kind of affected by this blast, right? Like, and I'm totally just giving ideas, like, if there was something above here, right, a nameplate or some kind of loose object that fell on Peter Parker or Miles Morales, just like it's dangling on him or something of that sort will help show like he Spider-Man's there's context, like he was behind him, because we don't know, right? He kind of at first glance he just floats in, and it took moments like, oh, he's on a desk chair coming in. So if there's something to remind, like he's been affected by this blast, and we can visually see it on him, that'll just tie Spider-Man to the scene a little stronger. So really small, like don't want to put more work on you, just some kind of object that would tie the two together is will help. And so kind of, obviously going from important to less important, like one thing, he's funny, like his reaction is hilarious. I just wonder if he's stealing too much of our attention, because one thing that happens is you have a lot of like lightning, you know, you have this kind of moment where this lightning is coming. So there's a moment here, right, that you're trying to, there's a story element or a moment you're trying to evoke. And the same thing with Thor, right, reacting. And I just wonder if he's catching too much of our attention. Like if you have this kind of like explosive, funny gag, I'm just thinking about him and him. I think about the librarian and I think about screen right more so. And then I kind of lose the lightning bit, right? So I just wondering if there's something you can do to tone him down or, you know, one thing you can do is, you might be doing it already, is play with the depth of field a little bit more. Um, you know, with the wider lens, he would be closer to the screen and he'll probably be a little bit more out of focus. So it kind of loses our attention. All we see is more of a smear frame, like a smear on him, rather than like, because he is kind of grabbing my attention. So there's just knowing like where to put your where the emphasis is. Because if you have too much, it's really hard for the audience to grasp like what's going on, for clarity's sake. So minor detail, but I think that would help the scene a lot. And I mean, there's so much here. It's like, I think you have a really good this is very strong already. So I commend you, and again, mad respect. This is fun, creative. And that wraps up my review. So I hope it was helpful, and I'm sure you enjoyed working on this piece. I can see how much passion and creative energy, and I'm very appreciative of and feel honored to review your work. So thank you very much. Have a good one. Thank you.